My name is Marlene Kessler. I'm 62 years old. Every Christmas morning, I set the table the same way my mother taught me iron the cloth. Smooth it twice. Then place each fork beside the napkin, never across it. It's a rhythm that used to calm me. This year, though, my hands shook as I arranged the silver. The laughter from the living room kept breaking through the quiet, like static on a radio. Ryan and Lydia were watching something on her phone. I heard her giggle first, high and sharp, followed by his low chuckle. "Mom, you don't need to fuss so much," he called. "It's just us. Just us." That's what he always said, as if family meant convenience. I smiled without turning around and adjusted the candles. The house smelled of pine and buttered rolls, but underneath it all was the faint, sour note of tension that had been building for months. Lydia drifted in with her phone still in hand, her perfume bright and sweet. "Don't move," she said, smiling like she was teasing. "You look so serious when you're working." I thought she meant it kindly. She pointed her phone at me for a second, then flipped her hair and went back to the couch. By the time the ham came out of the oven, everyone was loud and half drunk. I was too tired to sit. I just refilled glasses, kept the fire from dying. When I finally took my seat, my neighbor's call came through. Mrs. Porter never phoned on holidays, so I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. "Marlene," she whispered, "is everything all right? I just saw something on Facebook. You should probably take a look." I didn't understand at first. Then I opened the app and froze. There I was, standing in my dining room, bent over the table, fussing with the runner. The caption teased her for fussing too much. A few laughing emojis, one with Ryan's initials. There were laughing emojis underneath. My son's name was one of them. I stood there holding the phone until the sound of their laughter from the next room blurred with the ringing in my ears. The lights on the tree flickered in and out, casting the room in alternating shadow and gold. I set the phone down, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked to the coat rack. The night air outside was colder than I expected, sharp enough to sting my throat. I didn't take anything but my keys. By the time they realized I was gone, I was already halfway across the bridge. The city lights stretched like a path ahead of me. The road out of Charleston was nearly empty that night. The holiday lights along King Street shimmered in the damp air, red and gold, like a celebration I no longer belonged to. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, though inside I felt hollow, as if something had been quietly scooped out of me. I didn't call Elaine before I left. My sister and I hadn't spent Christmas together in almost a decade. She'd stopped asking after I married and stayed loyal to family traditions that never really included her. Still, when I pulled into her driveway, her porch light was on. It had always been on. Elaine believed a light should never go out for family, no matter how long they stayed away. She opened the door before I even knocked. "Mar," she said, squinting against the cold. One look at my face and her tone changed. "Come inside. Don't say a word yet." The warmth hit me like a blanket. Her house smelled of wood polish and soup. I sat at the kitchen table while she poured tea into a chipped blue mug I remembered from years ago. I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. I just said, they laughed at me. Elaine didn't ask who. She simply placed her hand over mine, her thumb brushing the ring I still wore out of habit. "Then you did the right thing," she said quietly. She made me a plate of chicken stew, simple, fragrant, enough for one person, for the first time in years. I ate slowly, without having to pass dishes or refill glasses. The silence felt strange at first, too big, like an empty church. But halfway through the meal, I realized I wasn't afraid of it. Afterward, Elaine spread a quilt on the guest bed and turned on the small lamp beside it. "Sleep," she said. "Tomorrow can think for itself." When she closed the door, the only sound left was the hum of the heater and the faint rustle of the ocean wind outside. I lay there staring at the ceiling. the glow of her porch light cutting a thin line across the room. It was the first night in years I didn't dream of serving anyone. Morning light seeped through the thin curtains, pale and unkind. I woke to the quiet hum of Elaine's kettle and the scent of coffee drifting down the hall. For a brief moment, I forgot where I was. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lydia's name glared across the screen. The message was short, sharp, and without greeting, I tried accessing the joint account. But it said closed. What did you do? Mom? I stared at it for a long time, the words settling like grit in my chest. No apology. No mention of last night, just money. That was always the language she understood best. Elaine glanced at me from across the table when I came into the kitchen. Bad news, she asked. Just a reminder, I said, taking a sip of coffee. My hands didn't tremble this time. By 9 o'clock, I was at the bank. The same teller who'd helped me open the account years ago recognized me. Holiday rush, she asked kindly. Something like that, I said. It took 10 minutes to close everything checking. Joint savings. The automatic transfers that had been quietly feeding their bills for years. Watching the clerk print the final statement felt like closing a chapter I hadn't realized I'd been trapped inside. Outside. The air smelled of sea salt and cedar from the nearby wreath stand. I tucked the paperwork into my purse and looked down Meeting Street, where church bells were ringing for the late service. I didn't go. I just stood there for a moment, listening, until the sound faded into the wind. Then I turned toward the parking lot, lighter than I'd felt in a very long time. It was 2 days after Christmas when Elaine found me in the kitchen, sorting through the receipts I'd brought from the bank. The morning was gray, heavy with the kind of stillness that makes sound travel too far. She held her phone out to me. Marlene, she said carefully, you might want to sit down. On the screen was a message from our old neighbor, Ruth. I saw Ryan and Lydia at your house. They said you told them to start cleaning things out. They came by, believing I wanted them to clean up while I was away. My chest tightened. Cleaning things out. I repeated. Elaine didn't answer, just handed me another photo Ruth had sent. The image was blurry but unmistakable. My living room with drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the rug, picture frames face down on the floor. We drove over before I could talk myself out of it. The street was quiet, wreaths drooping on every door. When I unlocked the front door, the smell hit first cheap perfume and dust. My mother's china lay shattered across the counter. The Christmas tree had toppled, its lights still blinking weakly. They said you didn't want this stuff. A voice came from behind us. Lydia stood in the hallway, holding one of my old photo albums. We were just helping. Ryan said, "Put it down," I said, my voice shaking more from disbelief than anger. Ryan appeared from the den, red-faced and defensive. "Mom, we're trying to get the place ready. You left." Elaine stepped forward. "This isn't yours to touch," she said sharply. The argument blurred after that, Ryan insisting. Me calling the police. Lydia muttering under her breath. When Officer Ortiz arrived, her presence filled the room with a calm authority I couldn't find in myself. She wrote the report while I stood by the broken china cabinet, my hands clasped tight. "This is trespassing," she said quietly. "They don't have your consent to be here." Ryan looked at me then. His expression caught somewhere between guilt and resentment. "I thought you'd want help," he muttered. I didn't answer. The officer handed me a copy of the report and told me she'd file it by morning, back at Elaine's. The house felt too quiet. I washed my hands, but the smell of broken pine and perfume clung to my skin. I sat on the edge of the bed, the police form folded in my lap, and for the first time since that night, I cried not for what they'd taken, but for everything I'd let them. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The sky outside Elaine's window was the color of pewter, the kind of muted light that makes everything look older. I couldn't go back to sleep. So I carried the box of papers from my house into the kitchen. Elaine was still asleep. Only the hum of the refrigerator kept me company. The papers smelled faintly of dust and candle wax. I started sorting them: old tax returns, Ryan's school documents, insurance forms. At the bottom was a worn leather folder I hadn't opened in years. Inside lay my savings statements and an old bank book, the kind I'd once balanced by hand every month. At first, the numbers didn't make sense. There were withdrawals I didn't remember making small at first, 50 here, 100 there, 100. But then I saw the pattern. They all came from the same ATM, the one near Ryan's office. I felt a cold prickling behind my ribs. I turned the pages and found a letter from the bank, dated 3 years ago, addressed to Marlene Kessler, co-applicant. I didn't recognize the account number. When I called the bank, the woman on the other end explained gently, as if I were fragile, that it was a credit card linked to my name. Ryan had opened it with my information, a small limit, she said. He must have had access to your ID. I thanked her and hung up. The silence in the kitchen felt heavier than the news itself. I thought of every bill I'd helped him pay, every time I'd told myself he was just struggling, just young. My son had stolen from me, not out of need but out of habit. I folded the papers back into the folder and pressed the cover flat, as if closing it could also close the ache spreading through my chest. Elaine made the call the next morning. She didn't ask for my permission. She simply said, "You need someone who knows what this means." By noon, we were sitting in a small downtown office that smelled faintly of paper and lemon polish. The name on the glass door read, Grace Tanner, attorney at law. Grace looked to be in her late 40s. Sharp-eyed, but kind, she shook my hand firmly, the sort of handshake that steadies you without asking. "Elaine tells me you've had a rough few weeks," she said. I nodded and slid the folder across her desk. "These are the statements," I said quietly, "and copies of the police report." She read in silence, turning pages with careful precision. When she reached the letter from the bank, she set it down and looked at me. "This isn't just careless," she said. "It's financial misconduct. Unauthorized use of identity. Co-signed credit without consent if you wanted to file a claim. You could." The word claim felt too cold, too professional for what this was. I folded my hands in my lap. "He's my son," I said. Grace leaned back slightly, the chair creaking. "I understand, but being your son doesn't make it right. People do terrible things when they know they'll be forgiven. That doesn't mean you stop protecting yourself." Elaine reached over and touched my arm. "You're not punishing him. Marlene, you're drawing a line." Grace slid a notepad toward me. "Document everything," she said. "Every transaction, every message, every object damaged in your home. If you decide to act, this will matter. If you don't, it still gives you clarity." The advice was practical, almost simple, but it landed like a stone in my chest. I left her office feeling both steadier and hollow, as if each truth named out loud had stripped another layer of illusion from me. Outside, the wind carried the scent of the harbor salt and something metallic, like old anchors. I held the folder tight against me and realized that maybe survival wasn't about forgiveness or anger. It was about learning to stand where no one could take anything else away. The call came late on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the garden behind Elaine's house, pruning the last of her winter roses, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen flashed Ryan's name. I almost let it ring out. But some part of me, the part that still remembered the sound of him as a boy calling for help with his shoelaces, answered before I could think. "Mom," he said, his voice low, strained. "Can we talk? Just the two of us?" He suggested a cafe on Broad Street, one I used to take him to after school for hot chocolate. The memory caught in my throat. I agreed. The cafe was half empty when I arrived. Ryan sat by the window, fidgeting with the sleeve of his jacket. His hair was longer, his eyes bloodshot. When he saw me, he tried to smile, but it didn't reach his face. I shouldn't have let Lydia post that video, he started. It got out of hand. It wasn't the video, I said, sitting down across from him. It was everything that came after. He looked down at his coffee. She didn't mean it the way it looked. You know how social media is. People blow things up. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. The papers felt heavy, heavier than their weight. I laid them on the table, neatly stacked. These are the withdrawals from my account, I said. And the credit card you opened in my name. He froze, then gave a short laugh that sounded like disbelief. Mom, that's just don't, I said quietly. Don't call it a mistake. You signed my name. You took my money. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. We were struggling. Lydia's job got cut. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. And the year before that. The one before that I asked, when I helped pay your bills, your mortgage, the car you said was repossessed. How much fixing did that need? The bell above the door jingled, and Lydia walked in. She was still wearing her work blazer, face drawn, but defiant. So this is where you've been hiding, she said to Ryan, then turned to me. I hope you're happy. You've made us look like fools. After all we've done for you. I kept my voice steady. What exactly have you done for me? Lydia. She slapped her hand on the table. Eyes sharp. Don't act innocent. Half of that money was ours. We had plans. You can't just take it all back. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and stood. There's no share in dignity, I said. For a second, no one moved. Then Lydia's mouth twisted, and Ryan's eyes fell to the floor. I walked past them, the bell chiming softly as I stepped into the cool afternoon. Outside, the sky had that late winter brightness that makes every color look clean. The air smelled faintly of roasted coffee and rain. I didn't look back. The folder pressed against my side felt like the only weight I wanted to carry. By the following week, the video was gone. Someone must have deleted it, maybe Lydia, maybe Ryan. But the silence left behind spoke louder than the noise ever had. Elaine heard from a friend at church that people were keeping their distance from Ryan's family. His accounting clients had started to move their business elsewhere. She had followed him, perhaps curious, perhaps still feeling entitled, and Lydia's company quietly removed her name from a community project she'd once bragged about. No one said why. They didn't have to. Charleston is small that way. News doesn't travel fast, it settles. Like dust. I didn't take any satisfaction in it. Not really. I just wanted air that didn't feel borrowed, so I went back to the library. The scent of old books and lemon cleaner greeted me like an old friend. When the afternoon sun spilled across the reading tables, I realized how much I'd missed the stillness, the rhythm of pages turning, the hush between sentences. At closing time, a young man I didn't recognize held the door for me. Mrs. Kessler, he said softly. My mom's in your book club. She told me what happened. You didn't deserve any of that. I thanked him, but didn't say more. Outside, the city was wrapped in that thin winter light that turns everything gold before dusk. That night, I slept without waking once. No dreams. No echoes of broken glass or angry voices. Just the steady rhythm of my own breathing, and the quiet certainty that the storm had finally passed. By early spring, after several weeks of searching and packing, I found a small apartment near the river, a place with just enough space for a table, a chair, and quiet. From my window, I could see the water glinting in the afternoon sun, the same river that used to shimmer outside the old house where everything began. Elaine helped me move in. We carried boxes filled mostly with books, a few dishes, and one lamp with a soft amber shade. When she left, she hugged me and said, "You'll like the mornings here. The light finds you first." The first few days passed in a hush I didn't try to fill. I learned the rhythm of my new street, the bakery doorbell at 7, the mail truck at noon, the sound of boats humming down the river just before dusk. Each sound felt like proof that life could go on without noise, without chaos, without me having to fix anyone else's mess. On the third night, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A short message glowed on the screen. I'm sorry. No name. But I didn't need one. I read it once, then placed the phone face down beside the lamp. The sky outside had deepened to blue, the kind that pulls the day closed like a curtain. I stepped onto the small balcony, turned on the porch light, and watched it spill softly over the railing. This isn't for waiting anymore, I whispered. It's for peace. A year later, I spent Christmas at Elaine's house. The table was smaller, set for 4 instead of 12, but it glowed with warmth, the kind that doesn't need proving. Laughter drifted from the kitchen as a neighbor stopped by with a pie and mentioned my library class for seniors. They adore you, she said. I smiled, adjusting the plates. The gesture familiar but light this time. I wasn't serving out of duty anymore. I was serving because I wanted to, because kindness, once freed from expectation, can finally feel like love.